Ned, I might throw out left field one at you at some stage, alright?
Hello, I'm Michael Verney and welcome along to the Indo GAA podcast with thanks to AIB. AIB is at the heart of Gaelic games across both club and county, and in 2025 they're celebrating a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships. With this year's championship shaping up to be one of the most competitive in years, AIB is more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more.
Welcome to Indo GAA. Delighted to be joined this week by Eddie Brennan to look back at all the weekend's action. Ed, how are you?
All good, Mixer. Yeah, enjoying the sunshine. The sunny southeast is very sunny this weather.
It's unreal, isn't it? Like, geez, the unbelievables were 100% right. If you could roof this place, like you'd be on to the winner.
Yeah, geez, it's deadly at the moment, and sure, the real Irish thing now just could do the supper rain all the same.
Yeah, well, you have to think of it. You have to think of the old Ferramoors. They want the grass only grows with a bit of rain. Doesn't grow with just sun alone, unfortunately.
Just talking of grass, I can't keep the lawn cut. It's brutal, but anyway, we won't complain. The weather is deadly.
Perfect weather for a nippy corner forward. Unfortunately, I always love the little supper rain to slow things down in the winter conditions. But whisper it quietly, Ned. Are Tip back?
I don't know, are they back? But they're certainly in good health. They are, I think they've been up and down. We've had a little bit of a mixed bag from them. I thought we had a nice steady league campaign where, in winter conditions, they showed real good form. Coming out of that, then look, they obviously had a very disappointing league final. And then there was a kind of a huge going, where are they now? Maybe they're not as solid as we were, because they were themselves and Cork were the two form teams coming out of the league. I thought they had a really good performance down in Nolan Park today. But I think the one area that we discussed here a couple of weeks ago and that we thought was very evident with this Tip team is their spirit and the character and the togetherness is what's really coming to the fore, because like all teams, sometimes you're measured on the team that has gone before them, and like you're looking at the Tip teams of 10, 16, 19. You had an attacking unit there that was lethal. So this Tipperary team, I think John McGrath as well is probably coming back into form. He's had a couple of barren years. He's had a couple of big injuries. He seems to be back on song, and sure, look, we know what he can do.
Just on that, overall, a lot of people would have finished his career for him, and would have been like, oh no, maybe doesn't have the legs for the modern game, but he has it upstairs, and he's moving well, and he has it upstairs, and he has it in the wrists obviously too.
That's it, Mixer. You cannot go into a shop and buy a bottle of hurling brains. It's not there. Do you know what I mean? And you can't. They're like, there's generational talents that have. They're like the Ronnie O'Sullivan of snooker. You see things happening before it happens, and like even just I suppose before we even get into it, like that pass from Noel to John, like John just peeled off him lovely, inside, and I suppose we didn't get to see the high behind angle of that, but I would love to see the way he probably sold Conor Lean to the right and then just reversed off him. And you're saying for young lads, sometimes they're running here, running there, they're running everywhere. But I think John McGrath, he's not one that has blistering pace, but he runs brilliant angles. He runs against you. He'll if you're trying to come against him, he'll turn and he'll go out against your, the arm. He'll work his way back against you, and then he'll cut hard. But what he has then is a great finishing brain. But going back to Tip, I think what was evident when the final whistle went, and they were under the pump on Saturday evening. They could have been almost, showering off and going home at halftime. Such was how well they played. They were creating goal chances. They tore the Clare backs asunder and just probably could have converted 2 more goals. Yeah, I think did they miss maybe 2-6, 2-8 in that first half? They had a good few wides as well. So they were zinging. But what was very evident for me was the spirit afterwards, the way they celebrated, because Clare got it back to a draw. They were struggling to keep ball, make it stick up front. And then a couple of puck outs went to, those mid-range ones from Reese. And he was able to kind of give the backs a little reprieve and get the ball up to the far ends. And again, John McGrath came back into the game. I think he won a free and got a point from play. They were massive scores. And so Tipperary's character was tested on Saturday in no small way. And I think Liam Cahill would be so happy with the character that they show and the togetherness and the spirit. And like, as the year goes on, or as the next match goes on, their hurling will come to the fore. Confidence now has to be in a good place, and they are now on their home patch. playing effectively a knockout championship match to stay in the championship, really, and possibly, maybe take them into a Munster final. Who knows?
Ned, I have to segue into something there, because I do think it's a fascinating conversation. Hurling brains. Hurling brains are so much different than brains sitting down doing an exam or something like that. Aren't they completely different? I've played with some lads, and they are the smartest player on the field. And that's not to say that they're the smartest player off the field, far from it. But on the field, their ability to know what's going to happen, to read situations, to lean into a lad, to play a hurl, to see space, to know when to drop back. It's a fascinating conversation, I do find, because it really is something that not that many people have it, like real proper hurling brains, and to be able to see things before they happen and know where to be, know what to do. I think it's an unbelievable thing to have. It's probably the greatest gift nearly anybody could have on the pitch.
Yeah, 100%, because you can train an old donkey to play cornerback. I know I'm only joking, Nick. I'm only messing. No, there's lots of guys I've been fortunate enough to play with. Guys that I would even say, Mick, guys that never even got as far as county level, and they had absolutely incredible hurling IQ. They just see things. They see their peripheral vision, I think, is something that's probably a hugely important thing, because they're latching on to colours of jerseys. They're seeing movement the last second. And I've often, I remember playing in a training match one evening, and I think Conor Fogarty, I was marking him inside Nolan Park, and he played me from the front, we'll say, and I just kind of turned out to the right, and I'm not sure it was a Paddy or Richie Hogan. One of them put the ball across to me, but they turned the ball, like they cut across the ball to get it around Conor Fogarty. That's the kind of example. He saw me moving, and he knew that was where the ball needed to go. And I think, you saw Noel McGrath. He had an easy point there at a time when you're tipping along nicely, and you're saying, build your scoreboard. But he knew that the brother was inside, and he knows his movements for years. He knows what he's doing. And John, equally inside, knows where that your man will be having a little peep. And when you look at it, and again, I'd love to see it on the high behind, because I often see lads making runs, and they're running here, they're running there, and the defender is shadowing them. But what John McGrath done, I'm pretty sure, was, he went to go right, he might have wrapped around the defender, and then he just reversed away from him, I'd say, and just peeled off lovely. And we've seen another one the week before. I think Tom Morrissey put one in over the top for Paul O'Brien, or for Shane O'Brien, the time he hit the post. Like, some players just have a gift to see that, and they will know exactly where to put the ball. And you might laugh at this, how minute I'm talking about details here. They're able to cut down on the back of the ball, because it'll kill the ball, as in it'll sit up for the guy that they're passing it to, or they'll know when to actually hit through the ball, and that it needs to carry, an opposition hurl that's going to come across. That's the type of thing we're talking about. They'll see even there, there's a ball coming to them, and rather than catch it and take the physical contact, they'll just turn and just with a quick tap of the hurl, put it back into somebody in space. And like I said there, we've been I felt coming out of 2016 that John McGrath was going to be the next big thing for Tipperary, because he was coming in around Shamey and all these lads. And I said, this is the guy now that the centre of this Tipperary attacking team is going to be built around for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And he got some horrific injuries. And I've been seeing him in action in club level as well. Jeez, he's brilliant. And we've probably at county level been robbed of that type of cuteness and, that smarts around the square, because, again, I just look, regardless, you just admire that type of hurling intellect. And I think that was the difference on Sunday. And Ormond played his role as well. Andrew Ormond was lethal. And this is probably the big strength of this Tipperary team is that the inside line with John in there, with maybe Darren McCarthy, maybe Andrew Ormond now, if they're getting fast ball in there, the wide open spaces of the stadium next Sunday for Waterford, they will relish that. And I'd imagine that the spirit, I said, is there, but the confidence in this Tipperary team is growing. And look, they're by no means the finished article, but by God, they're very much they're very much fighting for each other at the moment.
Just even looking at the likes of John and Noel, and even obviously TJ at the weekend as well. It's not all about pace. A lot of it is to do with pace of mind, and I think it's good to see that, because you can't just throw in 6 fast lads in the forward line. You need different types of players. You need ball winners. You need brains. You need someone who's going to control and dictate. But just something on Tip, Ned, having lost that lead, how big is it for them to have pushed on again? Clare hadn't just gotten under coattails, they were level with them, and you're thinking, looking at it, you're thinking Clare are the ones who are going to kick on here. All the momentum, the Cork second half kind of comes to mind as well, and you're kind of thinking they're going to kick on here, and Tip find another gear and kill the game really well.
Yeah, well, I thought, look, for the second time in 3 years, I mentioned this, Liam Cahill made a decision about his goalman, and again, I thought, look, I think Reese has that laser on his puck out, and he was able to find those early runs, especially once Clare went man to man, and Tip were able to create those pockets of space. He was able to hit them, and they were moving that bit quicker. They were a lower trajectory, but particularly in the second half when Tip were under the pump, I think Tip got 5 points for 25 minutes after the second half. And they looked to be in trouble, but he was always able to get a mid-range puck out, and they were able to get it inside. And then in the last 10 minutes, they might have picked off, I think, 4 or 5. I think they only got 9 or was it 10 points in the second half. So the last 4 or 5 of those points were what got them home, because Clare had really come at them. And it was just the resolve they had, the switches. I think Connolly ended up going out kind of centre back. Ronan was full back, minding Duggan. And, it was all hands to the pump, and they needed guys just sometimes as an out ball when they were under pressure, because it was like a ball wall in front of the Tipperary backs for a little while. They just were under constant pressure. But then, Jake Morris, I think, won a free out on the wing. John McGrath won a free inside. And these are the little things that matter when you're in a match of tight margins like that. A forward coming out there and winning a free when there's 2 or 3 lads bearing down on him.
It's massive, isn't it? People underestimate winning a free and just killing momentum almost.
And that's it. It just means that Tipperary were able to manage the clock. And it's not the same. I thought Reese could see that from out the field, that he needed to just take the sting out of the match. Clare wanted pace in that match. They wanted the ball. And that was the time. And I thought, even Tipperary, that's when I think you need to carry the ball a little bit more. If you get fresh legs on, carry the ball a little bit more, because the longer you hold on to that ball and can keep it up at the far end of the pitch, it's giving your backs a breather to reassess. But just one little thing I will say, and it's a kind of a bugbear of mine in terms of coaching, like when you say the brilliant basics and executing the simple stuff to a really high standard all the time. I think it was the calling card of the Limerick team over the last 6 or 7 years. But once I saw, I'm not sure who the Clare player was, got her possession, and I could see the Clare jersey loose outside Peter Duggan, and then the ball goes out bad. Now, I don't know if there was a hand in or it balked the hand pass. Do you remember at the very end?
Yeah, I thought that if that goes to hand, certain
once
goal.
I saw Peter Duggan loose and I seen your man shaping up to hand pass it out, I said, this is it. It's going to be down to, a goalie save or the ball's going to hit the net. And the ball just went out past him. And like, you're kind of going, okay, the pressure and fatigue and all those things. But if that ball goes to hands, you have a goal chance. And these are the small margins on which, a season can swing. But I think on the balance of things, I think it would have been cruel on Tip. They done so well to stick in that match, to build themselves a good platform. And ultimately, Clare probably just had to empty the tank to try to get level.
Yeah, just on that, Clare kind of ran out of petrol almost to get back level. And I see, the lads you're missing in your starting 15, you mightn't necessarily see it in, for the first 50, 55 minutes. But when you've had to go into your bench to bolster your 15, and then when you're bringing in lads, it's only natural the quality of sub coming in outside of O'Donnell is a bit weaker, and they were kind of hurt in the last 15 minutes, I'd say, just with the bodies that they're down as well.
Yeah, sure. Look at Mixer, they're missing 50% of their All-Ireland starting defence. That's a lot. That is a lot. Like, you're looking at some central players there, all-stars. O'Donnell then hasn't hurled, so it's you're peddling against it. And there was obviously then a little bit of noise around Aidan McCarthy as well, which doesn't help. And look, it's just, I suppose from Brian Lohan's perspective, when it's little small things, and they add up as the season goes on, and they were blind with that, and they were lacking leadership. TK definitely wasn't himself. He was out midfield. I thought maybe for a while do you dump him in around full forward and see what happens in there? Just maybe would it force Tip to bring a +1 back there or whatever? Just that side of it, because he from what I understand, he had an illness there lately, and energy levels didn't look the same. But like at the end of the day, Clare had a really good squad that won him that All-Ireland last year. But like you said there, you're still missing, you had one hurler of the year back in, having missed the previous match. You had another hurler of the year only coming back after injury, and 2 All-Stars then, not available to you. So that's tough going. John Conlon didn't start, only came on as a sub. So like that's where they were at, unfortunately. And like I said, what's probably forgot too is Clare have had an incredibly big 5 years under Brian Lohan. Have they been in 2-3 Munster finals, maybe more?
22, 23, 24 anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So they've had a lot of work. They've gone into the All-Ireland series the last couple of years under Brian Lohan. They have a lot of work put in. There's a lot of guys there on the go since that breakthrough team of 2013. Davy Mack, TK and these lads, John Conlon, they have a lot of mileage on the clock, and week to week, when you get into that kind of game, it's heavy scalping. So they just maybe ran out of juice, and their qualification now is like there's still so much can happen in Munster, and it's by no means set in stone yet.
Ned, should Clare and Lohan have bit the bullet in the first half when it looked like it was like the Red Sea, their defence was just opening up so easy? Surely they needed more bodies back there. And I know it's not his style, maybe to drop lads back or whatever, but I'm thinking back to the 2018 All-Ireland semi-final, the drawing game, when Galway had Clare ripped asunder in Croke Park, and they literally, I think it was 1-6 to a point they were down, and they literally pulled everyone behind the ball and just started carrying ball out and got themselves back into the game. It was under Maloney and O'Connor, and they got themselves back into the game, whereas like every time the ball went down from Shelley, even that deep ball, it looked like they were going to get a goal. And I just thought like they could have conceded 6 or 7 in the first half. Surely you try and shore things up. I know it mightn't be his style, and he's kind of maybe, had a go at previous management over playing sweepers and +1s and stuff like that. But surely you try and keep yourself in the game as well.
Yeah, well, I suppose we have the beauty of hindsight now and say, well, this is what they should have done or whatever. But I suppose it comes into what kind of work you've done beforehand. Like, I mean, did they know what, Rhys Shelley is going to bring to the game in terms of the way he can fly the ball out to the sideline? Like, they should know him. He was in UL. They would also maybe look at, and now you can turn around and, geez, sure, we have second vision. It's brilliant. Like, would it have been better maybe to withdraw a little bit and let Tip go short the whole time in the first half? Because when you have the wind like that, maybe teams tend to get congested when you have a strong wind behind you. And that probably would have suited Clare, whereas Clare seemed to go right up the field, and you say, maybe when you're against a strong wind, do you know, if you're playing, I often find with a strong wind, your forwards end up closing up space on each other.
Totally.
And it's so hard to play against that. Sometimes it's easier. Clare seem to have just kind of done that. They seem to have been happy to go man to man and say, right, rather than let the tip full backs maybe, we see teams sometimes doing that. Let the tip full backs have it, and then, we keep bodies there and we keep numbers around it. And sure, look, he may well have done it differently, but they decided they were going to go that way. And the tip movements probably around the middle meant that they pulled the Clare. Usually you try to keep your defensive structure relatively in place, but I remember looking at the puckouts and you could see there was massive space off down on the 2 and 15, or the 2 and 15 flank. Jake Morris was operating out there in the first half. And, once he's getting ball hitting grass in front of him, Andrew Ormond loves space. And again, Jason Ford is clever enough too. And they seem to just plant John inside, and Noel had the freedom to come around. And I suppose therein is probably one of the things. Can you let Noel McGrath go floating off or out around the middle? You can't. You have to tag him. So the game of chess then, maybe Tipperary won that little battle, and Lohan felt, like a lot of teams do, we've seen Noel McGrath go play that centre forward role where he just marauds around the middle and he picks up a world of ball and he hurts you. So they probably felt they couldn't do that. They couldn't afford to do that.
Eddie, you mentioned Aidan McCarthy. It was obviously a strange one, to say the least. I just looked back on the programme for the Waterford game. Aidan McCarthy's on the front of the programme, and then 2 weeks later, he's not in the matchday 26. He's not in the panel. He doesn't travel with the squad. He trains with Aina Kilnamona on the Thursday. He plays a Clare Cup game on the Saturday, I think at 2 o'clock for his club again. And just bits and pieces that are kind of hovering around Clare, and stuff coming out of camp, even about the Kelly injury and even about Conlon not starting. That kind of leakage is not good around a squad either, and it's usually not a good sign.
No, and sure, look, when things aren't going well, you have that, unfortunately. And look, there, like I said earlier on, sometimes when you're going through a season, it's death by 1,000 stabs. It's just little bits and pieces. And I know from my own experiences, through the different years, you need a smooth build up. You need, you try to keep your injuries to a minimum. You don't want any noise. You don't want any silly stuff. You keep things nice and tight. It's like even Liam Cahill. You think of the first year or two he was in Waterford, it was really, really locked down. And
literally.
Yeah. But you look at it, there was very little getting out of the camp, whereas the last year that Liam Cahill was down there. And again, I don't know, look, there's a lot of things at play. Sometimes, players can maybe just be a little bit individual about that, or you have to have everybody pulling in the one direction, and Clare maybe had that up to now, but I don't know exactly. Look, and there's a lot of talk going around, but look, either way, it wasn't helpful. It wasn't helpful for them coming in, because when you're under pressure like that, you just need to circle the wagons. You need everybody pulling in the same direction, and you just you need lads to make good decisions, whatever that is.
Just a quick one before we kind of focus on Leinster a small bit. I was down in Nolan Park on Saturday. I was working that game through in at 6 o'clock, same time as Tip and Clare and Armagh, Donegal, through a really big game, even for non-football followers. Would be like thinking, Jesus, McGeeney and McGuinness, I want to watch this. That threw in, half an hour beforehand. Where are we going, in that regard, as regards the schedule? I see no reason why, I would say, Offaly and Kilkenny couldn't have been on potentially this Sunday even. I know that would maybe only give them a 6-day turnaround, and maybe that's why. But it looks like we're just dumping a load of games on top of each other. And with the best will in the world, it's impossible to see it all. And we want to see as much as possible. But it's getting difficult to see. And you're obviously hurling first and foremost, but you want to watch the Ulster final as well. Do you know what I mean? You want to be able to dip in and watch everything that's going on. Then on Sunday, we just had the one televised game at 4 o'clock. And you're kind of thinking, geez, we're surely missing a bit of a trick here.
Yeah, and if you look at what's coming this weekend, it's just it's just a mess. Why isn't it spread out a little bit? And we've often talked about this. Look, the year is very compressed, right? The round robin in concept, and there was merit behind the split season, but I just think we are pushing in. And I heard a Galway footballer, I think, during the week talking about this, that there's no build up to matches as such. It's very muted, and we're just shoving everything in, and we're moving it on very, very fast. The football, to be fair, I think under the new rules, it's so much more exciting. I think the 2-pointer has made it such a spectacle. To even take in the Leinster final on Sunday with Louth and Meath, it was brilliant to see the bit of drama that, this attacking game, it has become a real attacking game again. So it's entertaining to watch more than it was over the last couple of seasons. And you just wonder, why is it being clashed at the same time? Up to now, they'd usually kept the Leinster, hurling and Munster kind of, alternating Saturday, Sundays. Like the Munster final this year, I think, is on a Saturday, if I'm right, and the Leinster is Sunday, and they do it the other way around each year. It's just everything is just being pushed in, and as a result, we're not able to consume as much as you like. And are we being a bit greedy? Yeah, we are. But sure, Jesus, it's the games we love. We want to see them. And I know we've discussed this before. We said, look, is a Friday night out of the question? We've seen this for 2 or 3 years, and I appreciate, look, guys are working on different things. That might be a push, but at the same time, I don't see why we can't separate out the fixtures a little bit much. What's wrong with a 2 o'clock throw in there on a Saturday, and separate the big matches? You look at this Sunday, that's just an absolute mess. You have a Munster match starting at 2:00, which is of huge significance to the whole calendar. You have a Leinster match, which is a big game now. You know, Kilkenny and Dublin. Kilkenny win that or get a draw, they're in Leinster final. If Kilkenny don't, they're heading to Wexford Park the following weekend, needing something to possibly, get through. And that might seem mad saying that they've won 3 matches, but that's the jeopardy that's there now. They have to go away to Wexford, who, if Wexford get the business done this week and win their match, then they know that if they beat Kilkenny, they have Kilkenny on a head-to-head. So there's consequences there. And then obviously you have, the third match in this current, Clare and our Cork and Limerick series at 4:00. So, what do you do there? Like, and you just, that's just, to me, it just defies logic, really, how you wouldn't separate one of those matches, and keep it separate, and have it that I think there's a lot of people that are around, the Kilkenny border, Tip border, up along through Laois, down across Limerick and places like that. And if they can go to a match up in Thurles, they'll go there. And they can get Nolan Park Saturday night or whatever way it is. There's a lot of hurling people and they'll go to matches. Whereas you look at Sunday now, how do you even start to watch those matches as hurling people? You want the little lab with 3 screens on it.
Yeah, it is. It's a mad one. I'm even thinking, and you were a Joe McDonough manager before, Leinster is obviously getting less coverage than Munster, and it kind of naturally so, based on probably, just the spectacles. But the McDonough is just so far in the distance, and something like James Duggan scoring 5-2 the other day, that's the only way the McDonough gets propelled somewhat into the spotlight when something extraordinary like that happens.
It's invisible at the moment. The coverage of it is relatively invisible, and we all get, I appreciate the RT and the different crews haven't that many cameras that they can send them out to everywhere and stream everything. We get all that. But I think there could be a little bit more of it just looks like the very minimum is being done on it. It just means that fix it in there and get it done. I guarantee you there's lots of people would love to be watching all of those matches the weekends. No more than the same, like you said there, Saturday evening, you have the big Munster match on and it's clashing with the Ulster final.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing, I think we heard recently they're on about not looking at pushing the All-Irelands back. I do think we're just ramming everything in. It's just very, very rushed. There's a lot of things colliding. I think you look at some of the attendances, I don't know. They're saying that the attendances were way up last year and different things, but I'm not so sure this year. There's a lot of matches. There's some big matches obviously are getting the full houses. But there's a very poor attendance. Nolan Park, I think, was there even 6,000 or 7,000 even in there?
5 and a bit, yeah. 5 and
a bit. And I'm going to put my hand up and say, I may as well make my admission. I was at home doing a bit of work. I was doing a bit of gardening, and I was ready to go into Nolan Park. And then I said, you know what? I'll leave it. It was too late, and I watched the Munster match. So, and that's the problem. You're left to decide.
Yeah, 100%. I'm even thinking if the league finished 2 weeks earlier and championship started a bit earlier, and then you could buy a couple of weeks at the end. If you could get a month, if you started the championship even 2 weeks earlier and finished it 2 weeks later, you would just have so much more space for things in between and less 7-day turnarounds. More Cork and Limerick is this weekend. It should be the only show in town, but you know what I mean? There's so many other shows going on that it's going to be somewhat muted coverage realistically. Do you know what I mean?
It is and in the order of to be honest, the order of you wanting to watch those matches is, well, if you have the 3 of them on at the same time, sure, Cork and Limerick is the big one. Waterford and Tip then has huge jeopardy there on that. And then you have, it's probably Kilkenny and Dublin next. And they're vying for that spot. So you're left to decide, and it's just, I don't know, I see no reason why we can't push the All-Ireland back a little bit. Just like you said there, buy a couple of weeks. It's not going to hurt the overall scheme of things. I'm not seeing club championships finishing early in the vast majority of counties and not going in. They're still being played off at the same time. The Kilkenny county final is still being played at the same time every year.
They're generally organised around when your county champions will be playing in the provincial campaign. And they're finished 2-3 weeks before that commences, and that's the
Like
way it will
the rare
remain.
examples you had there coming out of COVID was like Ferns, I think in Wexford had something like, was it 8 or 9 or 10 did a heap of time before they were going into the club, which doesn't serve them well either. And like you said there, the other one, like Waterford, after putting big energy in to beating Clare, well, 6 days later they're meeting a Limerick team coming down off a 2-week, training block, which is tough going. Like, you'd like to think that big matches like that with huge consequences, geez, you'd love to see a bit more of a gap. And I think that's where maybe a Friday night match might fold into that, or even playing a Saturday at 2:00 and playing the following Sunday or something like that.
Well, if they want to win eyes back, and I would probably extend the weekend, let the players know months in advance that there's going to be some games on a Friday night, and you could make a right weekend of it, and you get to see everything, which is huge.
Yeah,
well,
no, we spoke about this mixture. Geez, wouldn't it be brilliant? Can you imagine this weekend, for talk's sake, just to start it off? Waterford and Tip in Simple Stadium at 7:15 or 7:30. Even if I know the lights is we ideally would not like the lights. But at the same time, if you're only turning them on, towards the end of that match, I think we'd be all good with that. I think it'd be a great weekend, a great way to start off your weekends, and then have, be it Kilkenny at 2:00 and then Cork, and then your football on Saturday or whatever way.
Yeah.
But I definitely think you could roll with a big hurling and football match going on the Friday nights.
It's gas. I remember being down in Thurles on a Thursday night. Oh, I'm going to say 0-3 when Offaly played Limerick in the qualifiers, a Thursday night.
Oh, go ahead.
Bumper crowd, and it was a brilliant game. Bumper crowd, because people knew probably weeks in advance that this game was happening or whatever, but it extended the weekend, and there was a great kind of a buzz around it. So I definitely think it's something that needs to be looked at. Just a couple of quick things in Leinster, Ned. The form of Cathal Mannion for Galway. My God, he is ripping it up. And even the day against yourselves in the park, he was very good in defeat. But he is their go-to man now. He's hitting frees for them. He's central to everything. And they need to keep him fit, obviously, because he's the man at the minute for Galway.
Yeah, he is. And sure, look, we've seen him a few years ago. He kind of announced himself a little bit with a hat-trick up in Tullamore one evening. And what I like about him is he just is a fabulous striker of the ball. He's one of those hurlers we're talking about earlier on, that he sees things that other lads don't, like, and he just glides around the pitch so effortlessly as well. And I think, look, for me, sometimes it's like Lee Chin at the moment as well. Sure, he's red hot. Like, he's just, form is just on song. And sometimes you see these guys, it takes them a little bit of time, and once they get up into their late 20s into their early 30s, I think that's when they hit their peak. And you'd say for Cathal Mannion, maybe he's been he's been used in a lot of positions. He's so good, he could play at midfield sometimes. I think they even played him as a deep midfielder one time, as almost a 6. They played him in size, they played him in the half forward line. But and he's probably been a bit of a utility player, whereas they've kind of bedded him down now this year out in that half forward line, and like, he's one guy you cannot leave floating around with ball in hand.
Yeah, they've put themselves in a real good spot the other day with
they've straightened up nicely. Yeah.
Do you know what they did, Ned, as well? They were just working like devils everywhere. Like Conor Whelan, I don't think he scored, but geez, he was getting his hands in, he was getting his legs in, he was breaking up ball, he was getting his hurl across, and it was just an endeavour from them. That's the core of everything. It's the foundation of everything, really. And I'm not saying they're going to win All Ireland or anything like that, but when you have lads putting their shoulder to the wheel in that part of the game, other things will kind of fall into place.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And like, you have quality players, quality forwards, they have to do that heavy lifting as well. Like, you look at, say, ideally you'd love to be feeding Conor Whelan with loads of ball and bouncing on grass in front of him, where he made his name as a player. But he's not afraid to go in there. He's a strong boy. He'll go in there and he'll work. And that's the modern game. Like, we all know lads can score, but you have to be willing to do that. And that was the key point. That was the key factor that was missing the day below in Kilkenny and Nolan Park. They did not work that night for whatever reason. And the same too, like, Gavin Lee has grown into position there at centre back. Like, he got a fabulous point the other day, marauding up the field, and he done that in Nolan Park in the league match earlier on in the year as well. Like, he's very good ball in hand, and he's smart. He'll bring the ball out. He gets the head up, and he's seen that there was grass in front of him, and off he went. And without, knowing he had his 2 catches used up, just off his left and swung it over. Lovely.
Yeah, Galway have Antrim this weekend. Antrim are 0 from 3. Galway will probably, I'd expect Galway down through the years have when they should lay waste to a side, they usually do, and they're beaten by 20 or 25 points. I'd be expecting a big win from Galway at the weekend. Antrim have put all their eggs in that Offaly basket that last week. That's the only game that really matters. James McNaughton's going to be suspended now, haven't been sent off the last day. They have a heap of injuries as well. Keelan Malloy, Sean Elliott and a few more. I think getting them back for that Offaly game is huge. Just on Kilkenny, Ned, TJ wasn't, we'll say, at his brilliant best, but he still ended up with 2-9, 2-2 from play. And what I feared for Offaly this year is kind of materialising now. There's just a gulf in class, and it's just so important that things don't get away from them going into that last game against Antrim, because that is the only game that really matters, and getting a result in that game. But they're going to be coming in on a small bit of a downer now, it looks like, unless they can produce something against Wexford at the weekend.
Yeah, it is, and it'd be disappointing. And sometimes you get that when they've been making good progress over the last couple of seasons with Johnny Kelly. You do sometimes hit that valley year, and like I think you said, the key to it all is that what you don't want is that you drop back down. You know, it's one thing realizing where you sit in the order of things, or where exactly you are now in the hurling landscape, and what work you need to do. But at the same time, you just have to, I suppose, zone in on what's important now. I think they need a big performance against Wexford. And look, would it be beyond the realms of possibilities that they couldn't put up a big show against Wexford? Absolutely not. But they're probably missing a few lads. And look, they've a lot of young lads too. They're probably realising where they are in the hurling world and what it's going to take at this level. So it's been tricky for them. It's been difficult. I thought, look, maybe, you know, they had a couple of good results, you know, they've a few decent performances in the league. So you're kind of going, well, look, they've something to hang on to going in there. But I think from a team like that, when you're trying to make a step up, when the first one or two results go against you, it can kind of dissipate then a little bit. You know, it can take the momentum out of the group, it can take the confidence out of the group, and suddenly you're treading water.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously probably the biggest game in Leinster is the Kilkenny Dublin game this weekend. That'll be, obviously, someone's going to have 1 foot in the Leinster final. If it's a draw, they probably both have nearly 1 foot in the Leinster final. But one thing I have to chat to you, Eddie, about before I let you go, I'm sick of talking about them and I'm sick of hearing about them. And I cannot believe the ability of an association to shoot themselves in the foot as much as the Camogie Association continue to do. But this whole SCART debacle, like, imagine you were a manager of either of those two teams before that Munster final on the Friday night, getting word that the game is called off in the best interest of the players. And as a player, you'd be absolutely, you'd be bulling, you'd be seething. And it's just, I know there's a special congress coming later in the month, but I do wonder, do they converse with people before releasing statements like this? Do they talk to people on the ground? Do they say, oh, how will this look? Or how do you think, you know, this will be received by the general public? It's mad what's going on.
It stinks of people that are absolutely out of touch with reality. It really does. And that nobody, I'm guessing there's so many bodies in there that are in charge of that not one of them on the executive or behind that decision went, lads, I don't know, lads, I don't think that's going to help our situation. You know, because you're kind of, you know, in them situations, you know, you're paddling the canoe the other way, you know, one way or the other. And you're saying, well, look, you know, what's the consequences of A, what's the consequences of B, and what we do, and, you know, right, maybe this is the best way to go. We won't, you know, we'll go with it. We'll try find a resolution to it. I just don't understand, because by pressing that button, they've absolutely, like you said there, they've shot themselves in the foot. They've backed themselves into a corner. And I think what it shows, and just even, it's mad. This has hit the world media. Oh, yeah. This has taken off. And unfortunately, you know, I see it from sometimes a headline doesn't exactly tell you the full story. But a headline is what all these people worldwide are reading, and they're just going, oh my God, is the Stone Age after coming back to Ireland? That's probably what they're seeing here. They're saying how they're just seeing one headline. You're telling girls they can't wear skirts. Like, and that's all people are seeing. And as a result of it, the negative impact is, but going back to the players, because they're the central point of all of this, it's so hard. It's beyond frustration, let alone the management, but it's very unfair on them that they have their timelines, they have all the work that they're doing, and they are savagely dedicated to their game, to their teammates than any other group in a team environment. And that this is what was done on Friday night at 8 o'clock. I was coming home from training and I couldn't believe. I said, "Oh no, they did not." Because you're kind of going, okay, they're going to just let them do what they're doing, let the match go ahead, and we'll find a solution to it, and we won't make it worse. It's bubbling, it's starting to simmer, but let's not take out a big can of petrol and throw it on top of it.
Yeah, we seem to love to do that. I also think it's gas that how the GAA are blamed in this when it's nothing to do with the GAA. I love that level of ignorance that they can't realise that this is a different association completely, and maybe they will be integrated in a couple of years. But the GAA, as much as we like to give out, you only give out about things when you love them usually. But the GAA are blameless in this scenario. It has nothing to do with the GAA. But Eddie, I'll let you go out and enjoy the nice weather. I'm sure you have a nice pair of shorts on, so I'll let you go and enjoy the weather. Thanks a million.
Okay, all the best, Mixer. Take care. Bye bye.